Success, they're student athletes, and then often the part that gets overlooked or pushed to the side is the first part, the student part of student athletes, and talking about their success in the classroom. The reason I want to do this is for there's kind of 2 points that I want to make with this presentation. The first one is that I want to equip you, predominantly coaches, but even students in your classes or students you kind of mentor, equip you with some knowledge to talk to students and parents about breaking apart the myth that, oh, if they're in sports, they're going to do bad because they don't have time to study. Right? Especially here in Asia, a lot of parents, they feel like, okay, my kid needs to come home and study. They need to study, 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 study. They don't have time for volleyball. They don't have time for basketball. And after being in the States and coaching at a school that had 5 days a week of morning and after school practice for 4 months at a time, kids staying after school 2 days a week, they have plenty of time to study. Okay, and even a lot of the data that I'll share with you supports that even kids that are spending 5 days a week training and weekends at tournaments tend to be better student athletes, tend to be better students. And then the second reason that I want to give this presentation is to just give you some tips on ways that you can then support those students when they're not on the playing field, when they're not on the basketball court, so that way we can make sure that they are successful in the classroom. There's 3 main points that I want to bring up, just some stats, some statistics that you can share with parents and athletes about student success in the classroom, student athlete success. The second section is just me kind of nerding out about the brain and the effects of exercise on that, getting to be a science teacher for a little bit. And then lastly, the third section is just about how can we foster that student success as a coach. We might teach some of these kids in one class, maybe we might not teach them at all. I think, Matteo, you're a primary teacher, but you coach the under 19 kids, right? So you might not even teach those kids at all in the classroom. So how could you support them in their learning, even though they're not technically your student? So here are just some statistics about student athletes and their success in the classroom. The size and scale of the studies vary. Some of them are very, very broad studies. Some of them were very narrow studies. But overall, the trends are usually always the same. Athletes are better students. Not every single one, but on the grand scale, when we look at the overall averages and statistics, student athletes are better students than non-athletes. High school athletes have higher grades and lower dropout rates and attend college more often than non-athletes. A lot of our parents are worried about, is my kid going to get into university? Sign them up for sports. Right? They got to learn time management skills. They got to learn working with other people. There's a lot of things that they'll learn from being in sports. One of them will help them get into college. Students athletes tend to have a higher grade point average than non-athletes, a 2.84 compared to a 2.68. In the United States, they grade on a 4-point scale. A 4 is the highest you can get, an A is a 4, a B is a 3, 2 and 1, a 0 would be terrible, really bad. So this says they're about a half a letter grade, a partial letter grade higher than non-athletes. And this was in Minnesota. Pretty big student athlete population there. Students who participate in athletics missed an average of 4.9 days of school per year, where their non-athlete counterparts missed close to 10, 11 days of school per year. So athletes are in school more often, they're getting better grades, they're having more success after. Dropout rates are much, much lower in athletes than non-athletes. So here's some more stats from...
Is that where you're from?
I'm from Minnesota.
Okay. I was wondering why you were in that area. Okay.
This is actually stolen from a brochure from the New York State High School Athletics Association. And then I'm going to share that with you guys so you have the entire brochure. These are just some of the bigger points that I wanted to pull out for you. Some University of Chicago research suggests that a 2-to-1 margin for males and a 3-to-1 margin for females. Student athletes do better in school, they do not drop out, and have a better chance to graduate from college. So again, just the same things keep popping up in all these studies. Student athletes' parents are more involved in their education process. Again, this isn't every single one, but they tend to be. They tend to care what's happening at the school. They'll show up to events, they'll wonder what's happening in the classroom. A lot of schools have policies that they need to get certain grades to play, so the parents then care about their grades because they want to watch their kid play. It kind of goes hand in hand. Student athletes demonstrate a higher level of self-confidence than non-athletes. I know myself, as an adolescent, I had zero self-confidence. When I was in wrestling and I started to grow some muscles, that's when I said, oh yeah, I'm actually pretty good at this thing. You start to develop that self-confidence, which then translates into the classroom. You can be good on the sports field and you can be good in the class. 92% of student athletes do not use drugs. I'm not sure where this study came from, just some University of Chicago studies. 95% of high school principals nationwide believe activities programs contribute to the development of school spirit among the school body. It's where the school spirit comes from in most places. It's your sports program, tying things into that sports program, having events centered around the UBAC tournament, the ACAMIS tournaments, being the ISU Eagles. Yeah, Eagles, go Eagles, right? So they get that sense of school pride, that sense of belonging to something that's bigger than themselves. Nearly 7 out of 10 Americans say that high school sports teach students a lesson about life that they can't learn in the classroom. 9 out of 10 believe high school sports contribute to the health and fitness of participants. If you've coached, you know that you're teaching kids in a way that you can't redo in the classroom. Right? You're teaching kids who want to be there. For me, that's the big difference I notice. Basketball practice, all 12 of those guys signed up to play basketball with me. Basketball in PE, 3 of those guys were in the 12, the other 15 hope they're on the same team as those 3 guys. Right? And if they're not, they're going to pout and cry, it's not fair. And so there's a lot, it's a lot deep, I don't want to say deeper, but it's a different approach when you're coaching, when you're involved in athletics than just in the classroom.
In a friendly way, I have to. It is deeper. It is. It just is. Like I taught for years in Ireland, and the school that I taught in, I actually went to as a student. And when I went there, we were terrible at the school game. We only played one game of rugby, and then in the interim, I suppose it is correlated to me leaving. But after I left and came back as a teacher, the whole thing was completely turned around. I think results were up 20%. And we had an expression saying that when you're coaching them in rugby, when you're teaching them, like, it's not exactly this, but it kind of is. They're forced to be there. You know what I mean? They don't have a choice. When you're coaching them in a game, it's because they want to be there. You know what I mean? So like it's completely. So there's an emotional, like, I teach economics, they're not going to have an emotional affiliation to the demand curve. Do you know what I mean? But they will have an emotional affiliation to winning as a group.
100%.
Yeah, it just is deeper.
Yeah, you can reach them in ways that you just never could standing up here. Yeah. Hey, here's the chemistry lesson, here's the business lesson, whatever. Yeah. Even PE, it's 2 different animals, 2 different beasts. Then lastly, successful extracurricular participation is a school's best predictor of adult success. So if you've got kids participating in athletics successfully, you have a successful program, kids are invested in it, you've got parents invested in it, your school's behind you, there's a good chance that those kids are going to be successful adults in whatever path they choose. If they go straight into the workforce, if they go to university, whatever it is, that's the biggest indicator other than anything else. It's just, is your after-school program a successful one? If the answer is yes, then there's a good chance your kids are going to do well.
How would you define success? See, like, is it literally winning, or is it?
No. Right. I'm extremely competitive. If we play anything, I will do my best to win, from running a race to a basketball game to playing chess. Yeah. Like, I'm going to try to win. If I don't win, we're going to play a game. Yeah. Okay? But winning is not the answer. You can have an extremely successful program that never or hardly wins a game, and you can have a very unsuccessful program that wins all the time. I would say it's a lot of the things that we're trying to teach here about the education-based athletics. Are your kids learning lessons while they're playing sports? Are they learning things like leadership and teamwork and how to deal with a loss? You know, a lot of my teams, we've come really close and then a couple points, dang it. Like, how do you respond to that? As a coach, if I model like just frustration, anger, blaming the refs, blaming the other coach, they cheated, that's not a successful program, right? If I can say, hey, what could we have done better? What could you have done during season? Did you get good night's sleep this last week? Did you get good night's sleep during the season? Are you taking care of the stuff outside of sports so it's not a distraction, right? And if I took that approach down, we lost, but it could be a successful program. So it's hard to quantify.
Lessons learned. Maybe.
Lessons learned, participation.
Yeah.
Students ending the season
Better than
feeling
they were.
like it was a good experience.
Yeah. Very good.
Winning helps,
Mm.
but it's not always the end result. Some of the reason that students do better in the classroom, we've kind of hinted on them. We can reach them at a deeper level. We can teach them things. We can hold them accountable. They want to be there. But another thing that I just find fascinating, I'm a science teacher, PE teacher, coach. It's just the brain, and it's kind of like this new frontier. We like to think that we've got everything figured out in the world. We've got all the science figured out. We know how gravity works and all that. Scientists don't have a great picture of the brain. They're still learning a lot every day about the brain. And there's a ton of studies about how does exercise impact brain functioning. Okay, and so I'm going to oversimplify the brain. If any of you other people out there are geeks like me, it's overly simplified. And there might be some things that are technically inaccurate. But for anyone who's not a science teacher, this is basically how your brain works. So your brain is made up of roughly 100 billion cells. The more you drink, the less cells you have, the less maybe you got more. But it's about 100 billion. It's a lot of cells. Each one of those can connect to tens of thousands of other cells. They've got these little branches that come out on each end, and they make connections with thousands of other cells around them. So you've got a ton of them, and they're connecting to a ton of other ones. Every single thing you know, from the stuff you learned to your spouse's eye color, hopefully you know that, is stored in those spaces between your cells. You know how to walk. That information is stored in the spaces between your brain cells. There's more spaces between your brain cells than there are stars in the galaxy. It's fascinating. It blows my mind. But back to this presentation. The more connections you have, the more space you have to know stuff, the better your brain will function. You have more room to put files into. The stronger any of those individual connections are, the better you know that particular thing. Whatever's stored there, you know how to use it easily. It's like, a file cabinet. The bigger your file cabinet is, the more connection you have, the more stuff you can put in there. The file cabinet you use the most often, that's easily accessed, you can get at that information really quickly. Okay, so very, very overly simplified explanation of how the brain works, and now let's see how exercise can impact this. Again, there's a ton of studies out there about exercise and brain functioning, and literally all of them say the same thing. Exercise makes your brain work better. Not brain games or any brain mental exercise, but physical exercise makes your brain work better. How much better? They're measuring that. Which type of exercise is best? They're measuring that sort of stuff. But the overarching theme is the more you exercise, the better your brain's going to function. A number of ways that this happens. It increases brain mass, how much mass you have in your brain, how much stuff there is in your brain. It increases neuroplasticity, which is basically how well your brain can adapt to different situations. Memory retention, easy thing to measure. Overwhelmingly positive correlation between exercise and brain functioning. If you Google it, literally every article, every scholarly article will say the same thing. For some degree, the more you exercise, the better the brain functioning was. It does this in two ways. One, it increases the number of connections you can have in your brain. It helps your brain make more connections. Again, the more connections you have, the more information you can pack in there. And it also starts to improve and strengthen your existing connections. So you've just learned something new, you've just made a new connection in your brain, you're trying to store that information there, you get some exercise, and it's going to strengthen those connections. So then you can recall that information faster. In a classroom setting, we give information, and we want them to give it back to us in a month, right? On a test, we give them the lecture, and then they're going to take the test. So we want them to take the information, store it in these connections, so exercise is going to actually help them with their memory retention, help them with processing information, because it's making more connections in your brain. The really interesting ones for me were reading about studies where they've looked at the brain matter of people with neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, what's the other one? There's another one that's really, not dyslexia, but dementia, yes, dementia. And they've shown that when they get those patients or those people suffering from these diseases to start to follow an exercise plan, an exercise regimen, that they actually start to recover some of their lost brain matter. They start to get more white and gray brain matter, which are stronger connections, more connections, and you can kind of slow down these degenerative processes, which to me is just fascinating. Like, they don't have any medicine to solve these problems, they just kind of watch them waste away. But if we can just get them exercising, we can really slow it down and possibly reverse it. Again, this is on the frontier of science, so there's no like cure for you. It's not like, okay, you've got dementia, go run a 5K every day and you're fixed. But it's just really promising results. And then there are hundreds of animal studies, and again, they're all showing the same thing. The more exercise you have, the more improved brain function that the animals will have. They'll be able to go through the mazes faster. They'll solve the puzzles faster. It increases blood flow to the brain. You exercise, it actually increases how many blood vessels you have growing in your brain, so your brain's getting more oxygen, can then function at a higher rate. And so, if you really want to nerd out on parents who say, my kid shouldn't play basketball because I want to do better in school, you can say, well, like, make their brain stronger because of all these reasons. Exercise makes you smarter. It just is what it is. So athletes are no longer the dumb jocks because regular exercise actually helps your brain function better. And again, as a science teacher and a PE teacher and a coach, for me it's fascinating. But even with all these stats and the brain science to support you, you don't get a free pass on saying like, okay, now you're out for the basketball team, so you're going to be a better student. You still got to kind of work at it, right? It's not this, okay, now you're going to pass, you're going to do well. A lot of these students still need our help as their coach, as their mentor, to be successful. Okay, so it's our role to know that, yes, they tend to be more successful. Some of the reasons they tend to be more successful is they've got an older person, a mentor that cares about them to be successful, to lend them a helping hand. And so here's some ways that you can kind of help your athletes. My philosophy, and I think we hit on this a little bit with your question, it's not all about winning. Being an athlete is a privilege, and they have to earn the right, or they have to earn a place on the team. Student comes first in student athlete. So a student will need to meet the obligations of being a student before they can be an athlete. A number of ways you can check this. I've done regular grade checks, just sending out a blank sheet, getting their teachers to sign it, whatever their grade is. If it's below a certain mark, you can't practice, you can't play. Potentially meeting with teachers about students' performance in the class. Hey, I heard Billy was doing a knucklehead, what happened? Is it all right? Is he doing his homework? And then, okay, hearing from the principal. Often the principal would come to me, hey, so-and-so, they just got suspended. You might want to talk to them because they know that we have that deeper connection with the kids where maybe they're not going to listen to the principal, they're not going to listen to the teacher. They might listen to you as the coach. Some ways that you can do this. Some of this stems from an athletic director or even maybe an admin policy. but definitely having a clear policy in place. They have to have a certain grade, or a certain mark, or a certain attendance, whatever you feel is appropriate to participate. When I was at ASU, the policy was they had to be passing, they had to be above a 60%. If a kid was at a 59%, the same with running laps, if you're not past the line, it doesn't count. You're at a 59%, that's 1%. You should have done that homework assignment, and you'd be at a 61%, you'd be on the other side of the line. Sorry, you can't practice today. But it needs to be clear, it needs to be in place. There should be clear standards to meet. Again, is it attendance, is it grades, is it marks, is it completing your homework, no outstanding homework assignments missing. Just having something in place that they've earned the right to be a student athlete. And there should be a consequence for that. Here it's kind of hard to have a ton of practice time, like just a couple days a week for an hour or hour or two. So it is kind of hard to say, hey, you're going to miss the whole practice. But I've had students where there was just regular missing homework assignments, failing grades. They'd come in practice all ready to go and like, hey, I'm glad you're excited because you're going to be doing math for an hour and a half. And they'd sit at the table and they would do their math while we practiced. And if you've ever been a student athlete and you're excited about sports, there's nothing worse than not participating and watching your friends have fun. It sucks to sit there and have to do your math. When your math's done, you can go play. You need to check their status regularly. This can be homework journals, this can be signed grade checks. We even got to the point where our gradebook software could automate a report of who is below 60, who has a failing mark in a class. As the athletic director, I got that report every Monday and Wednesday, a couple times during the week. And if a kid was on that report, sorry, you don't practice until you're off the report. It made it really easy, but it does have to be regularly. A few years ago, I had just started coaching basketball. I had a kid on my team. He was not a great student. He had a lot of discipline issues, but in basketball, he was great. He was a phenomenal athlete, super respectful athlete. And I knew he had issues with not being in school and not doing well in his classes. He was an ELA student, so I was working with a lot of his teachers. A lot of his grades were failing, but he was on his homework. He was doing his homework. What I didn't realize is non-practice days, he wasn't in school. I didn't actually teach this student. And the student had signed a contract with the school that he could miss 0 days of school. The student racked up 19 or 20 absences. We're getting ready for the UBAC tournament, and the school comes to me and says, hey, he can't play because he's missed 20 days of school. He's got a contract with the school that says if he misses more than 1 or 2 days, he's out of the school. My response was, how in the world did he get to 20 then?
Yeah.
Like, where were you when he missed the first day? You know, but now he got to 20, and now you're coming to me and saying he can't play. He's missed school the whole season, right? And so it kind of put me in a weird spot because the school wasn't checking it regularly. So if you want this to work as the coach, it's got to be regular thing. Just, hey, show me your homework journal. What's your grades? Once a week. Like I said, I got an automated report 2 times a week, and that almost wasn't often enough at times. Some kids are like, I just turned something in and we should be higher. But sorry, that's what it is. If you're on the report, you're not in. Also, as the coach, if success in the classroom is important to you, if they see that that's important to you, it's going to become important to them. You've got to model the behavior you want to see in your athletes. So if you care about what their grades are, they're going to start to care about that because they know, hey, coach is going to check this. If you only care about winning, as we mentioned, that can't be the only thing, but if you only care about winning, they're going to see that and they're only going to care about winning. Oh, I can't do my homework, I got to go to practice. Oh, I can't do this, I got to go eat something so I can be ready for, I got to go do this. And they kind of push it off to the side. So if you can show that that's a priority for you, it will slowly become a priority for them, if for no other reason that they're going to do it so they can play basketball. Right? At least they're doing it then. And the last thing, as a coach, be willing to physically go and talk to the teachers. Sometimes you'll have to side with the teacher and say, hey, you should have done this for this teacher. Other times it might be kind of battling for the student. Hey, this guy, he's an ELA student, he needs some more help. What can we do to make him successful? Can he have another shot at the test? Can we have a revised version of the test? Can he have a little bit extra time to turn this in and get some partial points? At least he's going to do it. I'm going to help him do it. But be willing to go and have that kind of tough conversation with the teacher on behalf of your athlete. It's going to be twofold. One, the teacher's going to hopefully get their assignment to them. This thing they just deemed was important for homework, they're going to get that. And two, your student's going to see you having their back. Sometimes they might feel that it was unfair, the teacher treated them unfair. Okay, I'm your coach, I got your back, let me go and sort this out. Right? And so it's kind of multifaceted, just being willing to go and talk to teachers. As a coach, you also have to be careful that you are respectful in how you do that, and you are looking out for the kid, and sometimes consequences are consequences. When I was in Minnesota, same policies in place, you had to be passing, student failed a test, they had a big game, there was no way in the world this kid was going to be able to do enough work to get their grade above passing before the game. I was like, hey, I'll give him time to do it, I'll let him retake the test, but it's not going to happen. Sorry, coach. I understand, I want kids to be able to play too, but it's not going to happen. Okay? But the big thing is that ask, battle for the kids, and a lot of times the teachers will work for you, will work with you, sorry. They want the kids to be successful too. And so if you say, hey, he messed up, he knows that, right? Can you have another chance? How can we make it a win-win for both people? A lot of teachers will work for you. I mean, we're teachers and most of us will be willing to do that. So in closing thoughts, parents want their kids to be successful. That's why they're saying they can't go to practice, because they want them to be successful in the classroom. That it's a little misguided, but that's the underlying motive there. So with them, share with them that participation in sports is going to improve academic performance. And hopefully, slowly that message will get through to more and more parents, and we can show that. And then also, if you want your athlete to put stats in the win column, you need to be prepared to help them win in the stats classroom. So, kind of two-faceted. Kids are better, and athletes are better in the classroom, and two, we need to help them so they can be better in the classroom. Questions, thoughts, comments, concerns?
I like the way the question was worded to go to the teacher. It was about helping in their classroom. It was really keeping that student piece first. It wasn't, how can we get this kid to play? Yeah, it wasn't that. Because that is the end result, but that's the important question.
Yeah. What can we do to help them be successful? Yeah. Some kids just need somebody to watch them do homework. If that has to happen. A lot of times our practices for under 19 start at 4:30 to 6. So we had 3:30 to 4:30. In Zyson, when I was at the American school, kids would mow around, they'd go to Circle K, they'd kind of wait around. Okay, they're not doing what they need to do. 3:30 to 4:30 in my classroom doing homework. You have practice, you're not going to Circle K, you're not going here, you're not hanging out in school, mowing around. You're in my classroom doing your homework. And it's just, now they know, I'm there watching them, you're doing your homework. And teachers were willing to work with me, they'd send me, hey, they didn't do this, okay, here you go, Bobby, finish it. If you want to practice, you're going to get it done. And so it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Sorry, I seem to be monopolising a lot of your time.
No problem.
I think in ISU we don't really seem to have that, which I actually think is good, because it means that you can go to the teacher and say, okay, look, like you might be able to pass X assignment before the game, but like, can we put together a plan that you'd be willing to accept?
Yeah.
I think we had a kid last year, and there was a lot of issues, and then they weren't going to be allowed to go to Actimus, and one of the teachers went to bat for him, and they worked out an agreement, and I feel it honestly improved him as a student.
For sure.
Yeah.
We had it comes to mind, we had a Korean student. English was terrible, but he was in class every day doing what was asked of him. There's no way he's going to pass an English class because he doesn't speak English. Yeah. So it was like, okay, let's talk to the teacher. What is he doing? Is he doing everything he needs to? Is he going to his ELA classes? He's doing his homework. So as long as he's doing his obligations as a student, like, okay, that's fine. We'll make an exception on the rule, but it comes back to that, are they fulfilling their role as a student? And in his case, yes, he was. Just can't speak English. But there's other kids where it's like, no, he's more than capable, he just doesn't turn anything in. Okay, nope, you're going to do homework at practice. That's it for me. I think I'm over.